He was sold to the gang at 13, by blood, by family, but by nightfall, he became their worst nightmare. From being a victim to a myth, the street of Los Reyes will never forget. That's the story of Ghost. The first time Mateo Ruiz held a gun, he was just 13 and 3 months old, not because he wanted to, but because somebody in position placed it in his trembling hands and said, "You belong to us now, little man." Welcome to Deadend Stories, where real crimes, hidden secrets, and shocking moments in history collide. Stories of people who made choices that led to a point of no return. Because sometimes, truth leads to a dead end. The alley behind the abandoned laundromat smelled like urine, gasoline, and rainwater. Neon lights flickered from a liquor store nearby, while distant sirens screamed through the south side streets of Chicago. Mateo's fingers shook around the cold metal pistol. Across from him stood a man called Toro, 6'4", tattooed scalp, gold teeth, eyes empty and blank, bereft of emotion. Toro crouched down until his face was inches from Mateo's. "Your father owed us $40,000. Mateo swallowed hard. "But my father's gone," Toro smiled. "His debts ain't." Behind Mateo, his little sister Sophia cried softly. She was 14 but looked like 10, too skinny. Wearing a pink hoodie, 3 sizes too big for covering cause their apartment had no heater. Toro glanced at her, then looked back at Mateo. "One of you pays," he said calmly. That was the night their childhood ended. 3 years earlier, Mateo believed his father was a decent family man who strived to provide the basics for his family, doing everything within his powers to keep them off the street. Rafael Ruiz drove trucks across state lines as a trucker and was in the habit of stuffing cash in his boots. He bought Mateo books on computers and told him, "You're going to make us proud someday, son. You have been gifted with tremendous talent to be successful at whatever you put or mind. You're smart." Mateo loved numbers, codes, patterns, even dismantling machines even at a tender age. At 11 years old, he could repair broken phones from junkyard parts and bypass school firewalls in minutes. Teachers called him gifted. Neighborhood kids called him professor. But intelligence means nothing when poverty owns your zip code. The Ruiz family lived in a crumbling apartment where roaches crawled through electrical sockets and gunshots replaced lullabies. Every week, another boy disappeared into gangs. Every month, another mother cried on television. And every day, Rafael Ruiz sank deeper into debt with Los Reyes, a violent street organization that controlled drugs, guns, extortion, and trafficking across state. Rafael thought he could outsmart the gang. Not the first time, I must say. They all have same thoughts at first. Then came the robbery, a drug shipment that vanished. 2 cartel affiliates ended up dead, and Rafael got caught after a high-speed chase that left a police officer paralyzed. He was sentenced to life without parole. Mateo still remembered visiting the prison. His father, dressed in orange jumpsuit, looking frail with unsteady eyes scanning everywhere but Mateo. His father looked older and tensed. "Make sure you take care of Sophia," Rafael whispered into the phone receiver. Mateo nodded while fighting tears. Then Rafael made a statement that haunted him forever. "I made a deal to protect you." Mateo didn't understand then, but he would later, because Rafael had traded his children's, their future to satisfy his cravings. Bills piled up, electricity got cut twice. Their mother Elena spiraled into depression, then finally settled with addiction. At first it was painkillers, then meth. Eventually she disappeared for days at a time with strange men who left cigarette burns on the furniture. Mateo became an adult overnight. He stole groceries, fixed electronics for cash, skipped meals so Sophia could eat. Every night Sophia would ask the same question: Are we going to be okay, Mateo? And every night Mateo would respond as appropriate. Yes, sis, we will. But the truth arrived one freezing November evening when Toro knocked on their apartment door. Three men entered behind him, guns in hand with blank looks, no smiles. Toro sat at the kitchen table like he owned the building. Or maybe he did. He placed paperwork down carefully. Your father signed an agreement. Mateo stood silently. Toro continued. He couldn't pay money, so he promised labor. Sophia frowned. What does that mean? Toro looked directly at her. It means this family belongs to us until the debt is paid. Silence. Then Elena laughed hysterically from the couch, high out of her mind. You hear that? She slurred. We're property now. Mateo's chest tightened. Toro slid the pistol across the table toward him. You're smart, Toro said. That makes you valuable. He pointed toward Sophia. She's beautiful. That makes her valuable too. Mateo reached for the gun instantly, not to use it, to stop them from looking at her that way. Toro noticed and smiled. Good, he said. You've got survival instincts. The gang transformed Mateo slowly. That's how organizations like Los Reyes survive. Not through force alone, but by coercion and conditioning. At first, Mateo only delivered packages, watched corners, installed hacked cameras around rival territory. Toro discovered quickly that the kid was brilliant, that Mateo could track police scanners, crack passwords, clone burner phones. At 15, he built an encrypted communication system for the gang using discarded laptops from a recycling center. The older gang members began calling him Ghost, not out of fear, but because he could erase digital footprints like magic. Toro became obsessed with grooming him into an unseen entity in leadership, unknown but feared to drive loyalty and sacrifice. You know what makes you dangerous? Toro asked one night. Mateo stayed silent. You think before you act, before you move. Toro tapped his own temple. Most men use bullets, but smart men use fear. Mateo remembered those words vividly, because fear ruled everything around him. Fear of the unknown, of violence, hunger, and becoming a failure like his father, and abandoning his family. But unknown to him, Sophia was already slipping away. At 15, gang associates began taking interest in her. Men with expensive watches, exotic but tinted cars with predatory smiles. Mateo fought constantly to keep her protected. One night he came home and found Sophia crying in the bathroom, mascara smeared, lip bleeding. What happened? She didn't answer. He knelt beside her. Sophia, finally, she whispered. They said debt has interest. Mateo felt something inside him break. He stormed out with fierce anger, straight to the nightclub in search of Toto. Toro was seated in the VVIP lounge, surrounded by strippers and armed guards. Mateo slammed both hands onto the table. You leave her alone. The room went silent instantly. Toro stared at him calmly. Then he laughed. You think you got powers because you're useful. Mateo's fists clenched. Toro's expression darkened. Your father sold blood to save himself. The words hit like knives. Toro leaned closer. You want to protect your sister? He pointed toward the streets outside. Then become someone everybody fears more than me. That night, Mateo made a decision. If fear controlled the world, then he would master fear itself and bring it to them. Over the next 2 years, Ghost became a nightmare, in the dark, a legend. Police couldn't trace Los Reyes operations anymore. Drug routes shifted flawlessly. Rivals got exposed anonymously online. Evidence vanished before raids. No one knew a teenage boy was behind it all. Mateo built systems, designed patterns, manipulated and coerced people, played gangs against each other through schemes that couldn't trace. But every victory poisoned him further, took something from him, made him ruthless, emotionless. Violence became his daily companion, something he relished. A psychologist would later describe his condition as survival-based emotional dissociation. But on the streets, being ruthless and cold. Being cold means survival. Meanwhile, Sophia disappeared deeper into exploitation, luxury hotels, private parties, older men. She came home emptier each time. One night, Matteo found needle marks on her arm. He nearly collapsed. "I gave up to save us," Sophia whispered. Matteo frowned. "What?" "Telling Toro no gets you killed." Tears streamed down her face. "So I stopped saying no." Matteo couldn't breathe. All this time he believed his ruthlessness and relentlessness contribution to the cartel protected Sophia. But survival had already consumed them both. Days later, Matteo got info that Toro had secretly arranged to erase him after one final drop, while monitoring encrypted gang traffic in his tube. The information was encrypted and classified. It read "Execute Ghost" immediately after Operation 219. Matteo stared at the screen for some few seconds and left the tube. The next day, he went to visit his father in the cage. The moment Raphael saw Matteo's tattoos and hardened expression, tears filled his eyes. "What have they done to you?" Matteo sat silently, then asked, "Did you agree with them to take Sophia?" Raphael froze, and in that silence Matteo got his answer. The old man broke down sobbing. "I thought I had time. You sold us," Malik replied, voice ice cold. "I was only trying to survive," Raphael replied. Matteo slammed the metal table so hard guards looked over. "We were kids, for God's sakes." Raphael put his hands on his face and cried uncontrollably. Matteo stared at him with dead eyes. "You know what fear does, don't you?" His father looked up slowly. "Gee, it turns fathers into cowards." Then Matteo stood up and walked away, never looked back. The war started 3 days later. Ghost didn't attack with guns first. No. He attacked the mines, psychological warfare, bank accounts hacked, funds diverted. Safe houses info leaked, police received evidence files. Rival gangs got coordinates to drug shipments, all anonymous. Chaos spread across the city like wildfire. Toro realized too late that he had created a monster. Los Reyes members within a short while became victims, erased one by one, at filling stations, shopping malls, family gatherings without trace. There was pandemonium. Nobody trusted anymore. And fear, the same weapon Toro taught Matteo years earlier, consumed the organization from inside. The final confrontation happened in the abandoned steel factory near the river. Rain hammered the broken windows like accusation. Toro stood with armed men while Matteo emerged from the dark wearing a black gloves and a hood, covering a hidden vest. Still 19, but his eyes looked ancient and lost. Toro shook his head slowly. "You could have ruled beside me," Matteo answered quietly. "You took everything from me, my childhood, my family. We were children, Toro." Toro smirked. "The world takes from everybody?" "Tate, no," Matteo replied. "People like you do." Gunfire exploded from nowhere. There was immediate pandemonium, chaos, groaning, blood spraying across rusted machinery. Matteo moved through the factory like a ghost, with precision calculative, terrifying. Years of fear transformed into invincibility. The ghost, filled with ruthless violence. At the end, Toro lay bleeding against a concrete pillar. He laughed weakly. "You think killing me changes anything?" Toro coughed. "Blood spills. There'll always be another Toro." Matteo lowered the gun slightly. Toro was right. Poverty would always exist. Broken homes, addiction, abuse, and predators too. The system would continue to produce monsters unless the cycle is broken. Matteo dropped the weapon. Police sirens approached outside. Toro stared at him in confusion. "You're letting me live." Matteo stepped back into the shadows. "No," he said softly. "I'm letting you watch everything collapse, right before your face. Then he vanished before authorities stormed the building. Toro was arrested and charged with murder, prostitution, solicitation, and drugs trafficking. Months later, federal investigations dismantled huge portions of Los Reyes operations using leaked digital evidence from an anonymous source. Nobody ever officially identified Ghost. Some believed he died. Others believed he fled the country. But in poor neighborhoods across Chicago, stories spread quietly about a teenage boy who destroyed a gang from the inside after they stole his family. As for Sophia, she entered rehabilitation, started therapy, began speaking publicly about trafficking and exploitation. Healing came slowly. Some scars don't disappear completely. But survival no longer owned her. And Mateo? Nobody knows for certain. But sometimes, in libraries or internet cafes, people claim they see a quiet young Latino coaching kids coding, and scripted on the walls of the streets of Los Reyes. Fear will convince you that life is already decided, but the most dangerous child is he who decides to face fear headlong. If you did enjoy this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more deep, thrilling, and exciting stories. Share this video. Someone out there may needs to see this. Subscribe to Deadend Stories for more thrilling and exciting crime stories.